Hello and welcome to the Election Corner on One Man Think Tank. Today we are discussing my 2020 presidential election prediction for the fourth week of September from September 23rd to September 30th. Now, as you can see, I've already filled in the safe seats for both the Democrats and the Republicans. I would normally fill in the likely seats that are going to be as close to safe because if it's a flip, I don't like to put it in the safe category because incumbency bias is usually less of a constant bias and more of a volatile thing that can flip a state. But if I do that, spoiler alert, Joe Biden wins and I needed you to stay on the video for a moment so I can talk to you about what we're going to be discussing in this video. And also the fact I forgot to fill in Virginia is safe. As you can see, Joe Biden has a safe seat and is projected to win every seat Hillary Clinton won in 2016. This is just matching historic trends with the polling. Now, what we're going to be talking about in this election and cycle is mostly focused on the South this time around. So if you're looking for Ohio, Iowa commentary, the fact that I keep blanking and thinking this might be a Senate map, then this isn't going to be the one for you. But do stick around to see what my final prediction is. So we'll quickly go through these top ones and then do the South. So already we have three likely seats on the board. These are as good as safe for Joe Biden. They are Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Especially Pennsylvania. There has been more and more polling coming out showing Joe Biden, frankly, overperforming in Pennsylvania compared to what people thought would happen. And to give you an idea how good of a race this is for him, the best Republican poll that's come out of Trafalgar for Pennsylvania recently has been +2 to Joe Biden. Which is really bad for Trump, because if even Trafalgar Group's not for him... oh boy. Sorry, I've got a lot of phlegm in my throat. Lovely seasonal allergies. As for Michigan and Wisconsin, they seem to be reverting back to their trend of going statewide Democratic. Michigan's looking a little bit more so like it's going to go blue at the state level, but Wisconsin, or like state house, state senate level, Wisconsin less so. Ohio is going to be changing slightly on my prediction, up from tilt Republican to leans Republican, just because we're now seeing polling out of Ohio stabilize, with Joe Biden and Donald Trump being very close, but Donald Trump consistently ahead, with the trend line very much flattening in Ohio. In Iowa, another similar situation of Joe Biden had a massive spike in support there, and now it's starting to trend out, where Trump's looking good, but not amazing by any stretch of the imagination, and any surge of national support for Joe Biden or statewide support for Biden will flip the state. In Nebraska's 2nd district, you're in a similar situation. This district is flatlined at leans for Trump for quite a while, where he's not polling great. We haven't had much polling, but Republicans in general aren't polling great in this one particular district, and Democrats are polling a lot better than expected, with slight increases indicating that if there's deep push, it could flip. Meanwhile, Maine's 2nd district is going over to leans Democratic. It's starting to solidify back for the Democrats as we're getting more Maine polling for the presidential election. Joe Biden is leading by double digits statewide, which usually trends to all categories in Maine, including the 2nd district, means it's going to probably go to the Democratic Party. To give you an idea, at her best, Hillary Clinton was low single digits. And the last one you have is Arizona. You might have heard of a poll coming... I just checked it before I worked on recording this video, and you might have heard of a poll coming out that was something along the lines of, well, Arizona and Florida are super close for Biden. That poll had some really weird crosstabs that don't match with the national electorate as it stands. Biden has held a consistent lead in Arizona. Trump is only gaining ground in undecided voters, while Biden is nearly ahead. He's ahead. He's nearly either at or above 50 in Arizona, which is really good for him. So for right now, Arizona is going to remain likely blue, but watch this spot, this could change. Now for the meat of this video, the Deep South, which is, well, the Deep South is here and then Texas. North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, and Texas. These are the states everyone's really watching this election, because the South is slowly turning blue. By 2024, we could see an election where, if trends continue, not necessarily safe, but this is how the South looks, and we're talking Kentucky and Mississippi might be up for play, even Louisiana. But that's not what it is this election. But that's why everyone's paying so much attention to them. And in order to explain my voting for how I'm going to put each southern state the way it is, I need to explain to you how I make my predictions. I base my predictions on 4 things, really, plus some, smudging and figuring and guesswork thrown in there. Like a good prediction, a lot of guesswork. But I base it off the polling. That's simple and easy. I treat likely voter polls as better than registered voter polls for obvious reasons. I treat certain pollsters with higher standing. So that's like Monmouth, Emerson, Quinnipiac. Mostly, those are the big 3, according to me, though there are other ones who get my attention. Plus, worse pollsters who poll regularly will get a little bit more favorability from me, because at the very least I see a trend line from them. I might not use their exact numbers, but if I see it trending one way or another, so let's say we get a bunch of change research polls coming out that show the polling going up, then I'll assume, for the Democrats, then I'll assume the state is getting more blue. So I might adjust it a shade lighter blue in that case. Or if I get a bunch of Rasmussen polls which show the state getting more red, okay, I'll move it a shade red. That type of thing. And they still move with the states. They just have a bias to their final results. So that's the first one, the polling. The next thing I use is the historic bias of the state. So, is this a historically red state or a historically blue state? How have they voted in prior elections? Who have they voted for? Do they seem to like a certain type of candidate? And how have they voted recently? Is there a trend? So in a state like North Carolina, where the Democrats, where it used to be a very red state, but now we're seeing this trend where the Democrats are starting to really gain at the statewide level with the possibility of taking multiple state offices. State level offices, but also the state house and possibly even the state senate in this election. So you have that type of trend. Then you have the national trend, which is important. It tells you the general vibe, because that's usually what the media is also reciprocating. Because if you live in let's pick a random state, let's say Missouri. The 2 big polls you really care about, so if you're a poll watcher like myself or any of you lot, you're going to go state by state and look at all the polls and keep track of it. But if you're the average voter, you pay attention to 2 real sorts of polls. National polls and your polls for your state. So national trends will affect the states, just not as much as my other one, which is state trends. However, a state is trending. So, for example, even before coronavirus and such happened, North Carolina, at the state level, was trending more towards Joe Biden as election day got closer. As such, if a race is close, so it doesn't affect, so for example, we got 2 or 3 polls that showed, Missouri's starting to trend a bit more towards the Democrats, or Mississippi. That's great. It's not going to matter because the Republicans are still polling really well in the state. But in a state like North Carolina or the rest of these, as we get closer to election day, we need to keep in mind how the undecided voters are starting to break in the state. So, for example, nationally, Trump is gaining about 1 point a month, which is about, towards election day, which is about what he did in 2016. Meaning, by election day, he should be holding about 45 points in the polls if this trend continues. There's a solid chance it won't. He's going to still be at about 42, 43 points, but we'll have to see. Or he skyrockets, who knows? I'm willing to bet keeps trending up about a point a month, which will put him about where he was on Election Day 2016. However, Biden will be doing much better than Clinton did, at about 50 points, 51, 52 points. But what we're seeing now is Trump is starting to consume the undecided voters. As Election Day gets closer, people are making their calls. So what we're witnessing in the South are these trend lines, and that's what's going to really make my predictions not necessarily shockingly different than anyone else's, but it's the big factor for mine that other people don't use. They use the polls and go, well, today it says it's blue, so it's blue. Well, today, looking at North Carolina, yeah, it's blue. But a very tight blue. The state, very fortunately for the Democrats, is trending slightly towards Biden. Undecided voters are breaking almost equally for him and Trump when you average out the polls. As the numbers of candidates decrease, or undecided voters decrease, and days towards election decreases, both Trump and Biden are going up by about the same amount of points, with Biden barely ahead. He also benefits from the historic state trend line of they're really starting to go blue at the statewide level, which could have coattails to Biden. As for Georgia, this is going to leans Republican, up from tilt. This is due to the fact, for one main reason, Biden is starting to close the gap, which is great for him. However, Trump is still ahead in the polls, and the trend line, while it's starting to tilt for Biden, is not enough of a, oh, well, people are really breaking for him, that if they're tied or it's close, people will break for Biden on Election Day. Now we have my most controversial one, which is Florida being tilt Republican. There's a good reason for this, and it's not due to that skewed poll. It's due to the fact that, frankly, things are getting a lot closer. Biden has had a consistent lead in the state. But so far in historic polling averages for Florida, and how the trend line is going, they're starting to tie a lot more. Trump is starting to gain very quickly with undecided voters. Florida, there's a solid chance Florida is going to flip to Trump, not to mention it voted for him in the last election. So right now, Biden is the challenger. And as such, Trump gets the slight advantage. The state seems to be going more for him, and in a tied scenario, Trump gets the slight advantage. So right now, Florida is tilt Republican. And Texas, so if you're a Democrat, bad news in Florida, good news in Texas. Texas is also tilt Republican. This is because we're starting to see the Texas trend line go for the Democratic Party. The Florida trend line is going for Trump. Texas is going for Democrats, namely Biden. This means that Texas, while looking, so in the polls, Florida looks more stable for Biden, but Trump is gaining. Texas looks more stable for Trump, but Biden is gaining. And when a candidate is gaining in the polls, that means there's more enthusiasm for them. As such, you're left with this interesting picture of the South where really it's all up for grabs except for kind of Georgia. And for the record, the Democrats don't need North Carolina to win. They actually don't even need Arizona to win. They just need to rebuild Barack Obama's blue wall up here, and it looks like they're going to do it. But it also shows how volatile the South has become. Florida, you know what, is getting a bit more red since Barack Obama's days, but is still a purple state. Texas, on the other hand, is getting vastly more blue very quickly. North Carolina, the same way. Georgia, the same way. So, yeah. So the national trend line is Trump's gaining slightly, while the state trend lines are fascinating because in every state but Florida, out of the four I picked in the South, is starting to trend more blue. So we're going to have to watch this space over the next month to see how things change. Because very well by election day, I could be having all three of these as tilt Democratic. But with that being said, if you like the video, please leave a like down below. Also drop a comment. I love hearing your guys' opinions, questions, and, frankly, assistance in some of these predictions. If you want to see more from the channel, click the subscribe button and the notification bell so you can know when new content is released. If you want to see me outside of YouTube, I do have a Twitter, though it really needs to be updated. Twitter.com/onemanThinkTan1, the Roman numeral, link down in the description below. Otherwise, as always, and most importantly, have a wonderful day.